Hello everyone, thank you for giving our group the opportunity to tell you on depleted communities, understating the issue and the possible solutions. I would like to introduce my partners and talk about the outline of my presentation before start. First, I am Ling Xia, and I will take an example to analyze the factor that makes a community depleted. Second, Zhong Dai will talk about possible issues, and Xinling Li will introduce possible solution at last. Rumor has it, those who can draw lessons from failure are destined for success. So if we want to develop economy in communities, what can we learn from the experience of previous people? So let's talk about what is depleted community first. A depleted community is a place that lacks economic growth mechanisms but to which people maintain social valuations and place attachment. When you enjoy your lives in Cape Breton, do you know it was a typical depleted community before? Cape Breton is part of the Nova Scotia. It was a colony many years ago. By 1800, Cape Breton had a population at 2,500. At this time, the colony was struggling to survive and grow. The mines were struggling to produce, and because there was not a house of assembly yet established, taxes could not be collected. Into this situation arrived a new governor, John Despard. Under John Despard's leadership, the mines began to produce profitably. However, Despard used many measures to attract new settlers to the colony. He even gave money and land near Sydney and Mira. So between 1802 and 1845, over 30,000 Gaelic Scots immigrated to Cape Breton. People are labor. At that time, coal was Cape Breton's biggest site, but production was often inefficient. In the 1890s, companies from American and British coal made mining in Cape Breton unprofitable. In 1893, many of the operators amalgamated their collieries to form the Dominion Coal Company. In 1899, Henry Whitney, the Boston businessman who headed the amalgamation of Dominion Coal Company, developed the Dominion Iron and Steel Company. The expansion of Cape Breton mining had been attracting immigrants to the island for years. Now with the steel mill, Sydney's population boomed, growing from 9,009 in 1901 to over 20,000 by 1919. Cape Breton became one of Canada's most important industrial regions, producing much of its coal and steel requirements. The industrial area, the area that surrounded Sydney Harbour, was one of the fastest growing regions in Canada. The harsh work in mines and steel mill took its toll on mines who worked here, however, and consequently their families. Foreign owners would push production and keep wages low. In the first quarter of the century, the miners and steel workers staged a series of strikes to protest the working conditions and low pay. The first strike was in 1909 when the United Mine Workers of America (UMWA) began a membership drive in Cape Breton. Strikers and their families were evicted from company housing. Armed troopers were called in to suppress the strike, and in the end, the UNWA failed to achieve its goal. The second strike occurred in 1822, after dominant coal was sold, along with the steel plant, to a Montreal-based syndicate who formed the British Empire Steel Company, BESCO. It immediately cut wages by two-thirds. Workers won an injunction against the cut, but lost on an appeal from BESCO. Another wage cut was made 2 years later. The miners held a slowdown strike to protest. They were threatened by the armed force, and the only source of goods to the miners and their families was cut. After 8 months, the miners returned to work with a cut in pay. 1 year later, June 1823, workers at the steel plant went on strike to achieve union recognition. The local union president and secretary were arrested, and the international union refused to provide strike pay. The miners were ordered back to work, but the steelworkers successfully unionized. A fourth strike occurred in January 1924. When the miners' contract ran out, the miners asked to restore wages to 1921 levels. BESCO responded by cutting wages by 20%. Again, the miners walked out on a strike and lasted 3 months. The final strike staged by the miners during this period is the most infamous and the most tragic. In 1925, after yet another wage cut, the miners began winter strike. The company refused credit at its store, cut water and electricity to the tune of New Waterford, and used the mounted company police to terrorize the people. On June 113,000 boys and men gathered in town and marched to Waterford Lake, determined to rehook their water and electricity. What they met were 100 armed police. The conflict cost 3 men dead. After this period of labor unrest, BESCO was replaced by Dominant Steel and Coal Corporation. The new corporation did not cut workers' wages, and in the 1940s, coal production peaked in Cape Breton. No long after, the Dominant Steel and Coal Corporations announced that the mines would be run out of. Thus, in 1968, the federal and provincial government replaced the foreign companies as the major actors in the company. The OPEC, Organization of Petroleum Export Countries, raised in 1970s, became the last straw which breaks the camel's back. In 1990s, the traditional industries declined and collapsed. Finally, at the dawn of the 21st century, both the provincial and federal governments gave up on the steel and coal operations. After a serious turmoil, what happened in Cape Breton? As you can imagine, the economy declined. The rate of unemployment rose, dependent on government. CBRM's economic dependency ratio in 1997 was 47.2, meaning that for every $100 in employment income into CBRM, there was a corresponding 47.2 in government transfer of one sort or another. Even government spent much money to to support um, to support the civil's income. They also have low wages. Population declined. The out migrate is more than immigrate, and meanwhile, the capital flowed outside. There was little capital investment in Cape Breton. The major bank invests very little in Cape Breton, and the local credit unions do not offer commercial loans. Most entrepreneurs were having difficulties securing any kind of growth capital. Cape Breton is depleted and continues to be depleted as a result. People and capital leave the island. This bleak economic picture is in contrast to the vibrant social and cultural state of Cape Breton. Why Cape Breton become depleted? I summarize three of them. The first is they just have a single economic structure. They just produce coal and steel. So when they face OPEC, Organizational of Petroleum Export Countries races, the economic decline and collapse immediately. The second is unsustainable development. As we all know, coal and steel are all renewable resources, and after dominant steel and coal operation announced that the resource would be exhausted, the government just ignore it and don't have any economic transition. So after the resource exhausted, their economic collapse. The third is they don't respect human dignity. British Emperor Steel Company (BESCO) always cut wages and caused a series of strikes. They forced many people leave their hometown and even deaths from due to the strikes. After dominant steel and corporation replaced it, it um, keep keep the company stable development for more than 40 years without any wages cut, and they and it even in 1940s make the coal production peaked in Cape Breton. So uh, keep a low wages maybe is not a good measure to develop economic. There are many other issues will cause the community depleted. Let me introduce my partner Zhong Dai to introduce.
Hi everyone, my name is Edwin. Today I want to introduce the second part, which is related to the possible issues in depleted communities. First of all, I want to list five possible issues which affect depleted community negatively. The first is population loss. The second is monopoly industry. The third is about limited financial support. The fourth is called cultural demands. Finally, I want to introduce loss of motivation. Well, population loss has caused a series of problems. One is lack of human resources. It is common sense that human resources are one of the most important factors which affect community development. If a community wants to develop very well, it must need human resources. As depleted communities, it has limited ability to attract enough human resources. The second is about low purchasing power. When people leave the community, the purchasing power will be lower, obviously, because of loss of population. The third is about aging of population. Uh, It is a fact that most of lost people are young generation. People who are retired and elder do not have enough ability to live and move to other places. As a result, the average age of the community will be elder and elder, and it has become a depleted community. The second is about a monopoly industry. For depleted community, it is hard to transform economy because the structure of economy is too single, and people who work in this community do not want to change their lifestyles and feel suitable and comfortable during the work. As a result, it causes low motivation because they do not want to change. Uh, the third is about high living costs. This phenomenon is because the structure of economy is too single. If people want to buy something that is not produced by this community, they have to go to other communities to buy them. As a result, people will cost more money than exploitation because they have to pay uh, labor fees and transportation fees and so on. The third is about limited financial support. Financial support is always from government. For depleted community, it is hard to attract government investment. As a result, it is difficult for them to update the infrastructure. As a result, this has caused a series of problems such as traffic jams, bad road system, and bad traffic lights. Uh, Employees who work in the community has also been affected by the government funding. The reason is that government officers is arranged of financial support of government. If the government do not invest a lot of money to the community, they do not have enough income to support their family. The third is about low capacity to overcome disasters such as starving and death. Well, the government do not want to pay a lot of money for the community. They have to earn by themselves. As a result, people who live in this community uh, have to struggle with the disasters. Mm. If the disasters even are really worse, such as COVID-19 today we have met, they have to move to other places or suffer the illness. The fourth is about the cultural demise. Well, it can cause historical ignorance, which every culture has every community, and every community has every culture. It is a common sense, and if people leave the community, they also take the culture away. With time goes by, when all of people leave the community, the culture will disappear, and nobody wants to remember the culture. As a result, the depleted communities are assimilated by other communities. It is really sad. Finally, I want to introduce the loss of motivation. As the second part said, low motivation can cause high unemployment rate. The reason is that people do not want to change, and the structure of economy is too single. People who have other skills do not have enough opportunities to find jobs locally. As a result, they have to move to other places to seek job opportunities. The second is low productivity. They do not have enough motivation to create or update and stimulate economic growth. As a result, the productivity is quite low, and people feel suitable and they don't want to be effectively. Finally, I want to introduce the innovation. Depleted communities are always lack of innovation. Innovation is one of the most significant factor which can affect a successful community. If the community is not successful, they must be lack of innovation. Depleted community um, is really single and innovation is limited. As a result, it can cause depleted communities. These are five possible issues which I want to mention. Uh, Next, my partner Joy will introduce possible solutions about depleted communities. That's all. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joey. Two of my classmates have talked about the background and possible problems of the peace community. I would like to put forward some possible solutions and my own opinion on these issues. The first point is to address the problem of population loss. I will discuss this issue from three aspects. First of all, we have to find enough human resources. Basque it was a depleted community after the war, with its unemployment rate continue to rise. Local young people have left their community because of their disappointment with the local economy. Mondragon experiment is a 45-year-old network of cooperatives and support services, which is established to address the issue faced by Basque as an depleted community. The first step of Mondragon cooperatives to revive the local economy is to set up a playground to help local young people refresh themselves. After helping the community residents to build up their confidence, it then helped the local to establish some educational institution aiming at improving the social competitive of the local residents. After intellectual resource of a community exists, human resources can be gathered, and varieties of cooperatives and business institutions are spontaneously established in the local area, which makes the community regain economic vitality. Secondly, we should address the problem of uneven development. An important reason for the lack of purchasing power of residents is the unbalanced development of region lead to the excessive flow of money from grassroots class to upper class. Cooperatives can play the role of connecting communities and enterprises, relocating resources, balancing economic development, and ultimately providing the community residents with goods and services that are affordable. Lastly, we should consider about aging problem. The aging population will reduce the vitality of community economy, and the decline of productivity will affect the income and consumption power of community residents. The result is a vicious circle of economy, which makes the community depleted. The key to solve the problem is to attract sufficient young generation by enriching industrial structure. The second point is fighting against external monopoly and improving local motivation. Here is a good example on how local investment can help communities to resist the influence of monopoly of external enterprises and on local economy. The New Dawn Fund makes it a priority to invest in local enterprises, including enterprises which support the development of local agricultural products and show care for the health of local people. Carefully selected local business can promote Cape Britain's goods and services to overseas markets, which in return can bring overseas wealth to Cape Britain. The support of local enterprises can make local residents more actively participate in the community economic construction. Protecting and inheriting local handicrafts can transform monetary capital into intellectual capital, making it the source power of promoting economic development. Investment in local enterprises can consolidate the prosperity of local economic and leave more wealth in the local areas. A reasonable wealth distribution system can provide the local resident with goods and services, which are the basis for people to build confidence. Only when people have confidence in the economic development system can they improve their motivation and form a virtuous circle of economic development. The third point is finding financial support. Funding has always been an important issue in the development of community economics, especially in the depleted community, where investors lack confidence in their economic development. NPOs can establish a platform for the interest of all parties and play a positive role in financing enterprises. On the one hand, NPOs rely on their own reputation to find high-quality business resources for enterprises. On the other hand, NPOs help members of the depleted communities find the right project and get sufficient funds. Causeway has a project called Casual Job, which aims at helping people with mental problems to solve employment problems. In 2012, Causeway established a social enterprise called GNG to help to provide green services. At the beginning of the company's establishment, the capital was very tight, but Causeway, with its social influence, successfully facilitated the signing of long-term contract between GNG and Ottawa Community Housing, which brought sufficient capital sources to GNG at the beginning of its business. Similarly, this innovation economic development model can be applied to the depleted community. Depleted community can achieve a win-win situation through cooperation with commercial enterprises. The last point is cultural preservation. The first step of cultural preservation is to cultivate young people's love for traditional culture. Only when young people show enthusiasm in the inheritance of local culture can they inject vitality into traditional culture. The second step is to let more people participate in the protection of traditional culture, because Traditional culture is immaterial. The more use of it, the more effective we can protect it. The third step is to excavate the value of traditional culture. For example, investment in the production of traditional handicrafts can give artisans incentive to promote traditional culture. Only when the unique culture of community becomes the driving force of the local economic development, the development can be strong and sustainable. The next is the Q&A stage. We have 3 questions for you. 1. What do you think is the most significant factor for CED? 2. How do we define depleted community? 3. Some people think that the depleted community is just a part of the historical development that will be replaced by the strong. What do you think about this? In the end, thank you for your patience and the effort of all members of our group.